The Harvard admissions office came to my house and said they wanted to admit me. My mom pushed my twin sister Cindy forward and gave me a look, signaling for me to go inside. She was trying her old tricks again, wanting me to give up my spot at Harvard for Cindy. In my past life, my mom threatened me so much that I scarred my own face with a knife. I thought that would keep Cindy from coming after me. Didn't expect her to be so ruthless too. She slashed the exact same spot on her face. Reborn. I vowed to be my own person. Cindy and I are identical twins. Our parents couldn't even tell us apart, just by looks, and neither could anyone else. It was our clothes that gave it away. Since I can remember, Cindy dressed like a little princess, while I wore hand-me-downs from relatives. I wanted to be a pretty princess, too, so I once asked her to trade clothes. She looked at me all innocent and said, "No way, they're gross." We were born minutes apart, but our fates were completely different. My parents are superstitious, even though our birth charts are the same. The fortune teller said our vibes were different. Cindy would bring prosperity to the family and her future husband. I'm Fanny. They named me that because they said I was too plain. They claimed my early birth stole Cindy's nutrients, making her frail. Growing up, everything had to go Cindy's way, or I was the bad kid. If Cindy ever got hurt in any way, it was all my fault for not being a caring sister. They seemed to forget I was only 3 minutes older. When I was 5, they said schooling in the city was too expensive for us both, and sent me to live with Granny in the countryside. I was overjoyed, finally free from being Cindy's shadow and protector. I spent 10 years there. My parents didn't visit once. If not for the New Year calls, I'd have thought I was an orphan. At 15, I aced my exams, and my parents brought me back. Before I could even check out my room, they said I had to swap places with Cindy. She'd go to the top high school I got into, and I'd go to her regular one. I wondered, weren't they afraid I might mess up Cindy's supposed good luck by switching? They laughed it off, saying I'd somehow get smart by soaking up the good vibes from our ancestors' graves. What nonsense. Grandma married Grandpa long ago. Wouldn't that mean I soaked up his family's luck and not ours? Unbelievable. I dug my heels in. Why should my hard work go to Cindy? They took my phone right away, having expected my protests. Dad, Mom, it's my fault for being so weak, Cindy said, pretending to care. I didn't get into the top school. Don't make life hard for Fanny. I thought she meant it. Our 10-year separation led me to think maybe Cindy had changed. Nope, but before I knew it, my parents double-teamed me in a mixed-gender smackdown. You're never going to that top high school, no matter what, Dad sneered, pointing at me crumpled on the floor. They took my acceptance letter, said they just wanted a look, and gave it right to Cindy. Dad said if I didn't agree, I'd be out on the streets, and nobody would care if bad things happened to me. The little cash Granny had given me was confiscated, too, for my safety, they claimed. I had nothing, no money, no phone, and not a single familiar face among the neighbors. Scared, I eventually caved. Thought I'd still make it to college no matter which high school I attended. Well, I did get into the state's top college, but Cindy was envious over my admission letter to a 3-year course. I fell ill immediately, and my parents, perhaps anticipating this, were ready to switch us back again. Not threatening their own lives, mind you, but mine. Hilarious, isn't it? Just to make sure Cindy went to my college, they were ready to sacrifice me. That was when it really hit me. All this effort, and for what? To pave the way for Cindy. Was my future meant to be her stepping stone? Post-college, would I have to give up a great job, or husband, too? Depressed, completely disillusioned, I scarred my face, thinking it would save me from Cindy's machinations. But she matched my scar. Parents berated me as wasteful, harming myself and Cindy. They got her the best doctor. I got a pill bottle. Cindy insisted on equal treatment for me, only worried our scars wouldn't match if this went on. I refused to be her substitute any longer. On the day Cindy started college with my acceptance in hand, I jumped from the 20th floor. As my soul drifted above, I watched Granny and Grandpa weep over my ashes. Granny's hair, black and white, turned immediately gray. Grandpa cried silently, wishing he hadn't let me return to my folks. Seeing them so heartbroken, I regretted my decision. I didn't need to kill myself, just to cut ties with such biased parents. They wouldn't care, but my loving grandparents were crushed. making those who truly cared about me suffer. What a fool I was. As I thought this, a force nudged me from behind. Disoriented, I heard my mom's voice, "Fanny, if you hadn't hogged the nutrients in my womb, Cindy wouldn't be so weak. If she weren't frail, she'd have gotten into that top school." Discovering you've been given a second chance at life, what would you do differently? My first thought was, if I can't fight them, then I should at least get something out of it. They didn't even have to threaten me this time. I nodded and agreed to swap places with Cindy and attend a regular high school. "You agreed?" My mom looked at me, stunned. "If I don't agree, can you and Dad magically put me into that top school?" Her eyebrows shot up. "No way. Only Cindy deserves that school." In a past life, that sentence nearly broke me. I remember glaring at my mom and shouting, "I got into that top school. Don't I deserve it too? Mom, I'm your daughter too. Can you spare just a tiny bit of fairness for me?" Her expression got weird, and after a while, she said, "Blame it on your bad luck. Maybe in my past life, my parents had hardened my heart." Hearing her say again that I'm not fit for the top school didn't even faze me now. I said quietly, "If that's the case, then there's nothing worth fighting for. I'll go to the regular high school, but I want to stay in the dorms." My parents hadn't expected that from me. Cindy was crying, asking if I blamed her for it. I laughed at her. "What if I slip up when you bring friends home?" In the past life, I accidentally found out that Cindy always told people she was an only child. Cindy was stunned by my boldness, then finally told my mom to let me stay in the dorms, saying it would make home feel warmer whenever I came back. I knew she just wanted to hide me so I could continue being her scapegoat. During the first half of senior year, it didn't take long for me to become her fall guy again. She didn't know I'd been waiting for this chance. In my last life, the school hottie, Max, confessed to Cindy and got turned down. It was no big deal until they crossed the street and a car almost hit Cindy. Max pushed her aside, got hit, and woke up blind. Max's family didn't want my parents' money. They insisted on Cindy taking care of him. My dad brought me over and said I could use the name Fanny for now. They acted like it was a favor, like it was some dream job. This life is playing out differently. I've got plans to turn this around and reclaim my name, Fanny. We went into the hospital room and saw a middle-aged woman dressed like a socialite. "Since you're here, take her for an exam," she said. Max lay there, eyes covered in bandages, looking handsome and resigned. "Mom, the doctor said my eyes are fine. Besides, you can't just take corneas from someone alive." I whipped my head to my dad. "Corneas? Max, don't think I don't know. That girl pushed you, which caused the accident." I was shocked. This wasn't how it went in the last life. I remembered Max's mother, Mabel, never showed up last time when I took care of Max. No wonder he was always so cold toward me. Cindy had been the cause of his blindness. The accident had caused brain injury and pressure on Max's optic nerve, leading to temporary blindness. Without any bleeding or discomfort, he never got a CT scan. By the third day, he regained his sight, passed all eye exams, and went home. I didn't hear any more about him until Max's family called Grandpa for surgery. He's a brain surgeon renowned for success stories. Years ago, he lost his wife and child in a tragedy and left his job, retreating to the countryside as a village doctor. Later, he married his first love, Grandma. In those 10 years, I helped him with all his money orders, usually awards from published medical papers. In the past life, by the time Max's family hired him, it was already too late for the best treatment. This time, I want to ask Grandpa early on to treat Max. I plan to use Max's family influence to break away from home. They've got to have more money and power than my family, otherwise, why would Frank insist I care for Max? Frank kept apologizing to Mabel, insisting I stick around to look after Max. Max turned toward Frank's voice. "Uncle, you can take Fanny back. I don't need her help. Keep Fanny here. If you lose your sight, make her your eyes." Mabel got defensive. "Don't jinx it, saying things like that. You're the one who's blind, and your whole family is too." Frank awkwardly stood aside, then firmly pushed me to Max's bedside. I grew up in the countryside, so I quickly regained my balance and didn't fall onto Max. Up close, I saw his expression shift from defiance to furrowed brows. Max decided to let me stay, and both Frank and Mabel left us alone. Before leaving, Mabel still looked unhappy, as she reminded me to take good care of Max. I shut the door, turned back, and reached down to check his head. He grabbed my hand. "Who are you?" I tilted my head, surprised he recognized me so fast. I mimicked Cindy's smile. "I'm the one you like." Max extended his arm, holding out his phone. I had no clue what he wanted. After looking at it closely, I said, "You've got pretty pale arms." He chuckled, but then put on a serious face. "Every time Fanny sees me, she wants my number. If you were her, you'd jump at the chance." Even without seeing, Max teased me with his eyes. I hold out the phone, and she'd call her number immediately. "So, who are you really?" I stared at Max. This didn't happen before. Did he also come back? Quickly weighing my options, I figured honesty was the best policy. "I'm Fanny, also Cindy, but I'm not the girl you like." 3-0, so you're Fanny's alter ego. That logic was hard for me to follow. Fanny and Cindy are twins. Before high school, I was called Fanny, and after that, I go by Cindy. Now do you get it? "Got it," he replied slowly, reaching out his hand. "I'm Max. Nice to meet you." I mentioned that my grandpa's a brain specialist and asked Max if he wanted a checkup. I needed his consent before asking Grandpa for help. If Mabel found out about Grandpa and asked first, it'd be too late. Max's lips curled up slightly. "You're being so nice. What do you want? Are you offering yourself in gratitude?" I quickly shot back. Getting Grandpa to fix him up was a given. Besides, I wanted to make some money. Moving out from home meant I needed cash for rent. Max coughed hard, finally stopping. "Your family doesn't seem poor. Now you're asking the victim to pay you." "Victim?" I was a bit confused. "Didn't you get hurt saving Cindy? Is that what she told you?" "Cindy was the one who pushed me. Why didn't you report her?" I was amazed. Max must really like Cindy to put up with that. "I did report it. Your parents begged at my bedside, promising if my eyesight was okay they'd let it go. Your dad said they'd have Cindy take care of me, work like a slave, and if I ended up blind, they'd donate Fanny's corneas." I felt like I'd plunged into a freezer, shaking with anger. How much did my parents hate me to say something like that? "Hey, didn't you say you knew a brain specialist? Go make a call." Max's question broke me from my rage. Watching him, clearly worried but acting tough, I headed out of the room and patted his shoulder. "Kid, get ready to offer yourself." "Hey, what are you thinking about?" Max's annoyed voice followed as I left, and I couldn't help but smile. When I got back, there was already a male nurse in Max's VIP room. It made sense to get one. I'm a girl, and I can't help him to the bathroom or shower. I handled everything else, though, including feeding him. With the tasty food in front of me, I worked both hands. I fed him the carrots and greens I didn't like with my left, while devouring beef and fish with my right. Max stopped me when he heard me eating. "You're not using the same chopsticks for both of us, right?" I pressed both chopstick ends against his arm. "You can use both hands like that." He looked curious. I fed him a veggie and answered, "Cindy eats with her left hand. Her new school has classmates who know her from before. To fool everyone, I learned to eat left-handed." "Give me some beef. Don't just feed me carrots," Max complained. "Oh, and some shrimp too." Whenever we talked about stuff like that, he never tried to comfort me. He just changed the subject, so I wouldn't dwell on unhappy memories. After eating, Max called a friend right in front of me. "Did Fanny go to school today?" When he hung up, he said to me, "Fanny didn't. But how do you prove Cindy's existence?" I was sure this Max wasn't quite the same as the one I knew before, but he wasn't reincarnated. In my past life, he had seen me and Cindy together. I grabbed my phone, put it on speaker, and called. "Fanny, why are you calling back? Did Max suspect anything?" "You dare ask, Cindy. You pushed him to save your skin, and claimed it was Max acting heroic." I feigned anger. "Do you know he thinks I'm you and won't let me eat?" "Fanny, are you dumb? Why not sweet talk him? Say you were just panicked." "I don't know how you usually talk to him. Teach me so I don't slip up, or you'll have to deal with the fallout." After a bit back and forth, I asked how she was pretending to be me. "Pretending? I am Cindy. You're sharp, playing dumb for 2 years. I came back to school, and it's seamless." After hanging up, before I could speak, Max asked the male nurse to get 2 meals. "Didn't you get enough?" I was puzzled since we'd ordered a ton. I was stuffed. In a cool voice, he said, "You said you're not allowed to eat. These are yours. Don't be ridiculous." I was just talking. Seeing Max's grin, I realized he did it on purpose. You agreed to care for me just to make Cindy uncomfortable, right? After thinking a while, Max asked. Even though he couldn't see at the moment, I seriously replied from across, honestly. I wanted to see if you really like Cindy. If you're not into her, I'll get the brain specialist to cure you. Seeing his puzzled look, I laughed. If you like her, I'd be making myself the underdog, wouldn't I? Max paused, then burst into laughter. Fanny, if you fix my eyes, I'll protect your secret, he said seriously. I snapped my fingers. Deal. With Grandpa's treatment, Max recovered quickly, but still needed some time to heal completely. Max's family kept the news of his recovery confidential. Mabel helped me request leave from school, saying Max's blindness was from saving me, and I needed to stay home to care for him. A perfect chance to study on my own at home. For even though Cindy took over my identity and got into a top high school, her grades were always low. The homeroom teacher was worried about her dragging down the graduation rate. Now, I suggested studying at Max's house. The teacher said if my grades were too bad, I shouldn't even take the college entrance exam this year. Mabel suggested the school send a teacher to proctor at Max's house. The teacher agreed after hearing Max would also be taking exams. Max's dad was never home, and Mabel, a stay-at-home mom, put all her focus on her son. When she first found out about Max's blindness, she almost lost her mind and wanted Cindy jailed. But because Max opposed this, Mabel suggested Cindy look after her son. When my grandpa cured Max, Mabel's attitude toward me changed a bit. After Max told her about me and Cindy, her attitude changed completely. She boldly called my parents, saying I should stay at Max's to take care of him while he recuperated. In reality, Mabel got us tutors for all subjects. I decided to stop hiding my skills. When the mock exams were administered by teachers, Max and I ranked first and second in the class. The homeroom teacher called and told me to keep studying well at Max's, praising the tutors Mabel hired. That night, my parents called, demanding I come home. I'm taking care of Max now. If I leave, wouldn't they find out? My dad shouted over the phone, send Cindy over. You're living the good life at their house, while your sister gets ridiculed at that poor school. His yelling was so loud that Mabel, sitting next to me, heard it too and nodded to me. I said into the phone, all right, I'll come home tomorrow. The next afternoon, I got home and barely sat down before Cindy's eyes turned red. That morning, Mabel had taken me shopping. The tracksuit I was wearing was a new release from a certain big brand. Mabel bought it for me after finding out it was Cindy's favorite. Cindy's eyes lingered on my clothes for a long time, and when she looked at me, her eyes were even redder. Sis, last time you called, you said you were a slacker at school. You didn't tell me you actually topped the class in exams. I looked at Cindy. She only called me sis in front of our parents. What else did you think? If I always acted like a slacker, but then aced the college entrance exam, it'd shock everyone, wouldn't it? You have tutors now, so you're not scared. But Cindy bit her lip halfway through, looking really upset. My dad, annoyed, tried to pull me and Cindy into her room. We don't have much time. Tell Cindy about Max's place, so you can stay home. I dodged my dad's hand and looked straight at Cindy. No, let's talk in front of Mom and Dad. I'll tell you about Max's place. Seeing me cooperate, my dad didn't push further. The four of us sat on the living room couch, and I handed them the schedule Mabel gave me. It detailed waking up at 5 a.m. to make breakfast, and waking Max at 6 to eat. We started study sessions with tutors at 7, and at noon I'd help the housekeeper with lunch. Cindy was dumbfounded reading the list. Despite that, and seeing my clothes and designer bag, she still insisted on swapping places again. Cindy had me return to my room to change out of my clothes. She asked many details and even identified everyone at Max's house from photos on my phone. She decided everything was fine and had Dad take her to Max's place. After they left, I looked at my mom. She was impatient. Why are you looking at me? If you haven't eaten, there's leftovers in the kitchen. Heat it yourself. Mom, am I not your daughter? Why do you and Dad treat me like this? The question slipped out. Mom hesitated, reminiscing. When your dad and I found out we were having twins, we were over the moon. But during delivery, you refused to come out, almost causing Cindy to suffocate in my womb. Mom, be reasonable. I was just a fetus back then. I didn't know anything. If it weren't for you, Cindy wouldn't be weak. What's wrong with you taking care of your sister? In my past life, my parents always brought this up, and I kept giving in. Mom's voice grew louder. When you have 2 kids, you feel for the weaker, sweeter one. I waved my hand in front of Mom. Mom, I know even fingers have different lengths. I can understand you favoring one, but do you hate me so much that you'd make me Cindy's stand-in, letting her take whichever role benefits? She paused to think. When your dad first held Cindy, she smiled, and the next day your dad got a promotion. She looked at me with a bittersweet smile. When I held you after my confinement period, before you could even smile, I got the call that your grandma passed. And a fortune teller said you'd bring misfortune to family, but we couldn't just abandon you. I looked at her quietly, thinking that if she'd held Cindy, would my grandma's death be considered Cindy's doing? We sent you to the countryside, and who'd have thought you were so smart to get into a top high school? Mom's tone shifted. With your life's pattern, how could you attend a top school? Cindy's supposed to be the successful one. I used to think it was something I did wrong. Now I realized, in this life or the last, my ties with my biological parents were never meant to be. I tugged at my clothes. In the past few months at Max's, I was eating well, and the once ill-fitting clothes were now a bit snug. 5 When I was living at school, I didn't dare to order any meat for my meals. My classmates thought we were poor. I looked at my mom, wanting to laugh, but tears just started falling. Even if I told them we have a family business, no one believed me. I mean, even girls from regular families didn't dress like me. I looked like a rag picker. My mom looked disdainful. If your grandma hadn't remarried, we wouldn't have sent you back. She raised you to be so nitpicky. If grandma didn't remarry, would she still have to come to the city to work like a mule for you? I didn't want to argue with my mom anymore, so I grabbed my bag and headed to Cindy's room, but she stopped me. You've been gone so long you forgot your own room. I pushed her hand away, and walked to what used to be my storage room and opened the door. I pointed at the bed piled with junk and said to her, I'm taking Cindy's place to make amends at Max's, and there's no place for me here. Cindy is going to Max's under my name, so I can't even stay in her room. Given how much my mom favored Cindy, she definitely wouldn't let me stay in her room. Sure enough, my mom screeched, you're bad luck all over. How can you stay in Cindy's room? Fine. Then I'd better stay out of this house, so I don't bring you any bad luck. Saying this, I ignored her protests and walked out of that suffocating house. For the first time since returning to my parents, I left this house without a mask or a hat covering my eyes. As I passed through the community's leisure area, I walked slowly, constantly wiping my tears. I was soon called out by an elderly lady walking her dog. Cindy, who made you cry like this? An elderly gentleman next to her shook his head, saying I wasn't Cindy, my shape wasn't right. The old lady wasn't having it. If this isn't Cindy, then who is it? The man then said he just saw Cindy leave with my dad. I started bawling. I cried and explained, Cindy and I are twin sisters. I was sent to the countryside when I was little and only brought back in high school. My parents are afraid I'll hold them back and don't allow me to show my real face in the community. Whenever I return, I have to cover my face. Uncle, aunt, please don't get too close to me, or you'll get my bad luck, I said, crying. The dog-walking aunt handed me a pack of tissues. Your parents are jerks. How can they say such things about their own kid? You don't seem like bad luck. My dog Coco is very intuitive, and she didn't bark at you. The dog named Coco was circling around my feet. I thanked them over and asked them not to let my parents know, as I didn't want to make things worse with my family. The neighbors agreed and kindly asked where I was headed and if I had a place to stay. I said I would return to school, thanked them again, and left the community. In reality, I had no intention of going back to that ordinary high school. Now that I had switched back to being Fanny, I didn't plan on living under Cindy's shadow anymore. Walking over the bridge, watching the traffic below, I felt sure that life was going to get better. At this moment, my phone rang. It was a text from Max. He sent a hotel address and room number, saying if I didn't have anywhere to go that night, I could stay there. Mabel was supervising Cindy and couldn't take my call. When I got to the hotel room, I found 2 brand new outfits on the bed with a card handwritten by Mabel. It made me smile, and I felt a bit warmed inside. The next afternoon, Cindy called me. She yelled at me for being deceitful, for tricking her into going to Max's place and suffering while I bought designer clothes to wear home, making it look like I was living the good life at Max's. I just hung up on her. Whenever she called back and continued to berate me, I'd hang up again. It wasn't until the nth time she called, speaking calmly, that I coldly responded, "You crashed into Max's car. I took care of him from being blind to recovering. Now, all you have to do is simple chores, and you're upset." Cindy broke down, crying hysterically on the phone. Annoyed, I told her to keep her voice down, or else what if the people at Max's found out? Then I hung up and sent our call recording to Mabel. She told me everything that happened after Cindy got to their house. Cindy arrived, and Mabel made her remove her designer clothes, throwing her a set of filthy ones to wear to weed the garden. Spoiled Cindy had no idea how to do any of this. "What's wrong with you? You said you could weed the other day, and now you can't," Mabel said skillfully, not letting Cindy suspect that my life at Max's wasn't as I described. After finishing her tasks, Cindy was going to eat dinner with Mabel and others, but the maid Wendy stopped her, reprimanding her for forgetting the rules. Servants don't eat with the family. I laughed out loud at the thought of Cindy's face when I read Mabel's message. Did she think switching identities with me was that easy? Cindy attended high school under my name. She hadn't run into my middle school friends, and besides, who would suspect someone would go to high school under another's name? Then Frank called, asking me to go near Max's house, so Cindy could find an excuse to meet me and switch back. Why should I? You guys kept saying I was enjoying myself at Max's yesterday, and now you want me to switch back, because I'm your dad, and I have the final say. You're my dad, not some king. You can't dictate everything. Finally, Frank promised not to interfere with my affairs if I switched back with Cindy. I knew it was just another one of his tricks to deceive me. I pretended to believe it and went to the area near Max's house to call Cindy and asked her to come out so we could swap identities again. When I got back to Max's place, they greeted me warmly. Mabel took me to a room on the second floor and said this would be my streaming room. This was something we had agreed upon before I went home. The plan was, as Cindy suggested, to have her come to Max's house and experience my situation there, so she would want to leave. When I returned to Max's, I started streaming, but I didn't show my real face. Mabel had a special outfit made for me, styled my hair like an anime character, and even gave me a mask. I chose the nickname, "Who Am I?" for my account, and named the streaming room the same. Mabel had already informed family and friends that I would be streaming. On the first day, the stream was quite popular. My streaming time was 8 p.m., focusing on teaching subjects and study methods from 7th grade to 12th grade. Thanks to my past experience and extra tutoring this life, any learning problems during streams were a breeze for me to solve. For the first stream, Mabel brought in friends to support me. After that, my skills alone drew in fans. I received lots of tips, and each streaming session turned out to be quite profitable. Max even had anime figures and a banner made for me. The first line on it read, "Solutions to 7th to 12th grade study problems." The second line, a bit amusing, listed chores like laundry, cooking, tree climbing, fishing, and home repairs. The third line mentioned post-high school advice. Everyone was super curious, and I told them I was a senior in high school. The chat exploded with disbelief. No one believed I was just a high school student. Some even said I must be a teacher because I wore a mask. While everyone was questioning me, Cindy called and invited me to meet the next day. I found her waiting in an alley near the school. Before going to the regular high school, she made my mom buy a new uniform. Now, she was wearing my faded one, and I couldn't grasp her motive. I didn't feel like playing games with her and asked directly, "What's up? Why'd you call me here?" She looked pitiful, but spoke with a touch of arrogance. "That who am I online, that's you, right, Fanny?" I raised an eyebrow. Even with a voice changer, she recognized me. Cindy wiped her eyes as if crying. "What do you want? If you won't say, I'm leaving." I wasn't interested in her drama and turned to leave. Cindy grabbed my sleeve, appearing helpless. "You pretend to be a slacker at school, but I know you're a genius." I was invited to participate in a competition, and winning first place could get me a spot in college. "You have to compete for me." Since swapping places with Cindy and attending that regular high school, I always wondered what would happen if we swapped back and others noticed something was off. I chose to act as a slacker regularly but excel in exams. At first, classmates and teachers thought I was cheating. After taking several tests, they realized it was just a quirk of mine. No one knew I was preparing for now. Cindy fell into my trap the moment she forced me to switch places to stay with Max. Even if her grades at the prestigious high school weren't great, she could still make the top 20 in our regular school exams. I usually topped the grade in big exams, which Cindy couldn't, so classmates and teachers would get suspicious. They would be crucial witnesses to prove my identity in the future. You know, I've always envied you, Cindy said, putting on a pained expression. Even though our parents don't care for you, at least you have freedom. She'd always displayed an arrogance, like a peacock unfurling feathers in front of me. It was the first time she'd spoken softly to me. Our parents always told me how lucky I was, but I never felt that way. I even had to fight you for a spot in high school. Her proud tone contrasted with her sorrowful face. Watching you swap identities with me twice was satisfying. Why should you have a happy childhood in the countryside? She laughed, a crazy laugh that made my skin crawl. I thought I could pretend to be you and enjoy life at Max's, but you uncovered my identity quickly. I didn't want to hear more, so I interrupted impatiently. If you're just here to chat, I'm leaving. I told you, compete on my behalf for that college spot. Then you're free. Cindy glared at me. Help me get the spot, and you can go back to being Fanny. I'll always be Cindy. Forget it, that's illegal. I was naive and scared by my parents before, but not anymore. I turned to walk away, as Cindy's confident voice followed. You'll agree. Back home at Max's, I felt their strange looks. Mabel asked me seriously, are you really Fanny or Cindy? I was stunned. What's going on? Mabel didn't call me to the study like usual, but asked right there in the living room. On Mabel's phone, I saw a video Cindy sent, showing us meeting earlier, with her playing the victim. Cindy sent a long message claiming I bullied her, and that she was the true Fanny. I couldn't help but worry about my sister's intelligence. Didn't Max and she sit next to each other in class and still couldn't tell us apart? Judging by Mabel's displeased expression, I knew what this was about. Cindy just wanted to make things uncomfortable for me so I couldn't stay here. Then Dad called Mabel, his loud voice echoing through the living room. If you don't let my daughter back, I'll report you to the police for abducting a minor. I couldn't hold back, shouting into the phone, I'm coming home, and I'll be back tomorrow. 7 Nanny Wendy helped me pack my things in my room. I noticed the jade bracelet she was wearing. It looked just like the one my mom had hidden away. No wonder Cindy knew I was me. The next day was Saturday. I left Max's place, dragging my suitcase home. As soon as I entered my neighborhood, someone stopped me. Honey, are you okay? I recognized her as the lady who walked her dog and smiled, saying I was fine. But just as I was about to keep walking, she grabbed my arm. You look like you're ready to fight. Are you going to battle it out with your parents? Next to her was her little Samoyed, Coco, who looked up at me with those big, curious eyes. I'd heard Samoyeds always seem to smile. Seeing its fluffy white fur and almost upturned smile made me feel a little better. Even a dog was kind to me, but my own family felt like they wanted to destroy me. Tears started falling. Oh, sweetie, why are you crying again? What happened to you? She pulled out a tissue and handed it over. More and more people started gathering around. I began to explain from the first time Cindy and I switched places to coming back today. I don't even know who I am anymore. Before 15, I was Fanny. These past 2 years in high school, I'm Cindy. I cried, telling them I'd been living as Fanny while staying with Max. But now my parents wanted me to be Cindy again for her exams. You're that Who Am I streamer, right? One woman recognized me. I was curious about how someone could not know who they are. Yesterday, I watched your stream with my daughter. You said it was the last time and took off the mask. Others around also realized who I was and started talking. I nodded through my tears, explaining how Cindy was claiming I was pretending to be her, and my dad threatened to accuse Max's family of abducting a minor if they didn't let me come back. I came back to ask if they could give me a chance. On hearing this, the dog-walking lady and several neighbors offered to go with me. I asked them to hide by the stairwell near my apartment door. We agreed that if my family let me in, they'd leave. As soon as the door opened, Frank was already shouting, "Fanny, thought you were so capable. Why come back at all?" I didn't step inside. Instead, I stood at the doorstep, speaking softly. "Dad, I wanted to ask what I need to do to have a life. As long as you go back to being Cindy and secure her a spot at college, you can come home." Looking at Cindy's disdainful face and my cold parents inside, I was secretly pleased. The more they acted up, the more the others behind the door would sympathize with me. I kept my expression sad. "I just left Max's, but if I go back to school as Cindy, what about my education? Cindy will be Fanny and finish school for you. Once she gets the spot, you can come back." "Dad, have you thought about what happens if I get caught taking Cindy's spot? What happens to me then?" Just as I finished speaking, Frank slapped me. I didn't dodge. If I had, it wouldn't have had the same impact. The slap was loud and clear. "If it weren't for you jinxing the family, I wouldn't have to hustle like I do. Asking you to help your sister was doing you a favor." Frank's face shifted when he looked past me. I turned to see the neighbors, led by the dog-walking lady, stepping out one by one, all looking furious. Cindy squealed and ran back inside. Frank stared at the lady, then stammered, "Wendy, what brings you here? If I hadn't come, I'd never know you've got twin daughters, and you're making one take tests for the other," Wendy said, then turned and gently held my hand. "Don't worry, dear. You can come with me. Tomorrow, we'll explain everything to the school." My parents tried to stop us, but the other neighbors blocked them. Wendy took me to her home, introducing me to her husband, Vincent, who turned out to be a vice principal at the Key High School. Hearing my story, Vincent immediately called the principal to discuss it. After the call, Vincent reassured me, promising to help sort things out at school the next day. As Wendy prepared a guest room for me, she asked about my favorite foods. Looking at these two kind people, I felt a wave of gratitude and guilt. Bowing, I apologized. "I'm sorry for taking advantage of your kindness." Vincent pulled me up with a smile, glancing at Wendy. "If you hadn't told us, we would have never guessed." In a past life, I learned that Wendy's husband was the vice principal. Her passion for walking her dog, chatting with neighbors, and eagerness to help were well known. The first time, I cried in front of Wendy. I planned it during her usual dog walking schedule. I knew Cindy often hung around her, and I never showed myself in the neighborhood. Wendy would think I was Cindy when she saw me. Seeing me cry, she'd go home and tell Vincent, who'd investigate the next day at work. I was a top student in middle school, but started failing once I entered high school. Anyone curious would see through it. I knew Wendy would be out walking then. Being recognized as the Who Am I streamer was expected, given my massive following. But I didn't anticipate the neighbors' readiness to help, especially Wendy's. I thought she'd just tell Vincent about it. I never imagined she'd make room for me in her home. Their kindness left me feeling too guilty to keep playing them, so I confessed. The two older folks laughed after hearing my story, and said they understood where I was coming from. Kitty found out I was looking for a place to rent, and offered me a temporary stay at her place. Vincent talked to my grandparents over the phone, and helped me find an apartment in the school's residential area. He also assisted me with the school enrollment process, and my grandparents came from the countryside to live with me. During the day, I attended school, and at night I continued live streaming at home. Mabel had made some outfits for me and insisted I take them along. I wore them during my streams, and I loved the line from my favorite anime, "I control my fate, not destiny." Max made custom anime figurines for me, which I also brought back. They perfectly captured the spirit of those words. I'd even stream while doing laundry and cooking. A lot of people were surprised to see me hand wash clothes. I used to wash my mom's silk dresses and Cindy's clothes by hand, I'd say with a smile to the camera. Before I could finish the stream, my dad called, really angry, and he ended up arguing with Grandma on the phone. Seeing how upset Grandma got, I took the phone and promised I wouldn't mention anything about Frank, Monica, or Cindy on my streams again. Even if I didn't say it, people watching could tell I hadn't been living well at home. After every stream, when we saw the income, Grandma would say it felt like performing online just for money. I explained with a smile that I'm actually tutoring a lot of people online, helping others while revising my own work. It's a win-win. Grandpa thought it was a great idea, and wanted me to teach him how to stream too. Time flew by, and soon it was time for the college entrance exams. I didn't expect to end up in the same exam hall as Cindy. After the exam, I saw my parents standing at the school gate with umbrellas, seemingly arguing with Grandma, so I ran over. "Don't even think about it. Fanny's done with her exams now. What do you want her back for?" Grandma's face darkened. "Don't tell me you want Fanny to give her spot at a good school to Cindy again, Mom. Come on, we are Fanny's parents, after all. What's wrong with wanting her to come back home?" My mom insisted. Her senior year is the most crucial, and back then, you didn't want her to come back to study. Why have her return now that she's done with exams? Mom stepped forward, glaring at Grandma with a harsh tone. "You need to be sensible, okay? Fanny's estrangement from us is because of you and Grandpa." Monica's sharp voice caught the attention of other parents, making Grandma so angry her face turned pale. I quickly held her steady and turned to Frank and Monica. "Dad, Mom, back then you asked me to give Cindy my spot at a prestigious high school, saying Grandma couldn't afford my schooling without a pension. When I refused to pretend to be Cindy for the entrance exams, you wouldn't let me live at home." I wanted to keep talking, but Frank rushed over, wanting to hit me. Grandma was desperate to protect me. I caught Frank's swinging hand, surprised when he turned to the people around us and said, "This daughter of mine has been lying since she was little. She's the real Cindy. She just had to pretend to be her sister when she saw her get into a top high school." He also yelled at Grandma, insisting she'd been fooled, claiming that the Cindy who just left the school was actually me. Grandma laughed, exasperated. "You're biased parents, and you think I'm stupid too." She pulled Cindy over, looking at the crowd. "I might not be well educated, but is there a teacher here who can give these two kids a tough question right now and see who can answer?" Cindy's face went pale. "Grandma, I have a stomach ache from something I ate at home today." There were boos all around, and someone recognized me, shouting, "I am who I am." I waved to everyone, admitting I am who I am, and someone yelled from the crowd, "No need for questions. The other girl just needs to explain how to prepare sweet and sour fish, like how to remove the fishbone and whether it needs refrying." Cindy couldn't answer, but I smiled and gave the answer. The crowd shouted, "She doesn't know anything, yet claims to be Cindy. Do they think we're fake fans?" Frank and Monica's faces turned red, and they tried to leave with Cindy. I grabbed Cindy's hand, but she struggled hard. I shouted, "Everyone, look, Cindy and I look exactly the same, but you can still tell us apart by our skin tone. Wait." Cindy pushed me away and slipped into the crowd. I looked at Frank and Monica, who were trying to stop me, but were held back by the crowd. "Dad, Mom, Cindy and I were born just 3 minutes apart. Why do you see me as bad luck? You're a jinx. If it weren't for you, we wouldn't be shunned by the neighborhood," Frank shouted. Grandma, angry beside me, said, "You sent Fanny to the countryside when she was 5, ignored her for 10 years, and blamed her for everything wrong, even as parents. That's how you behave." Do I even need to blame her? Since she went to take care of Max, my business orders have dropped off. I moved forward and looked at him firmly. "Dad, I've been living with Grandpa and Grandma for a year. Has your business improved?" Running a business isn't gambling. If you don't run your company properly, how will it ever succeed? Destiny isn't something calculated. If you want good grades, work hard at studying. If you want a good life, change it yourself. My words got applause from the people around us. Frank and Monica left in shame amidst the mockery of the crowd. Grandma patted my hand, saying Grandpa had cooked at home and was waiting for me. Back home, seeing a table full of dishes warmed my heart. 9IV always had a weak relationship with my parents, but having loving grandparents made up for it. In my past life, I craved my parents' approval so much. I just wanted one compliment from them, thinking that if I bent over backward, they'd treat me better. But every time I backed down, I realized they'd just push harder. In this life, since I can't change how my parents see me, why not treasure the love of my grandparents? This time, I can make it count. After that, for a few days, my parents kept bringing Cindy to visit me. They were not only nicer to me, but also changed their attitude towards Grandpa. Grandma even asked if it was because of what I said at the school gate that their conscience was finally pricked. Then, when my college entrance exam scores came out, Harvard's admissions office showed up saying they wanted to admit me. My mom tried to push Cindy forward and signaled me to go inside. I couldn't help but laugh from the absurdity. Really, they want to pull that switcheroo again. The admissions officer chuckled. You're Fanny's mom, right? There's a video from the school gate incident that's gone viral online. We know you have 2 daughters and that you favor the younger one. I've learned my lesson. That's why I'm trying to mend things with my daughter. How could I even think of letting the younger one replace her? My mom babbled and tried to drag me back into the house, leaving Cindy behind. The officer blocked her. Do you think we're fools? Both girls are here. I'll just give them a question and see who solves it to identify the real one. Cindy panicked, saying it wasn't her idea to impersonate me, and ran away. My dad pointed at me. You're such a curse. Ever since you were born, nothing has gone right for us. Enough. Grandma stepped in front of my dad. Do you really believe what that soothsayer said? Why don't you get your fate read instead? When you were born, your father passed away in an accident. Everyone said you were bad luck. But did I abandon you? My dad shouted. No, I wasn't. Grandma looked at him with pity and said softly, you were bullied for being a bringer of bad luck. Why can you punish your own daughter the same way? In a flash, I recalled a past life when I'd jumped from a building. After Grandma saw my ashes, she seemed to have said the same thing to my dad. Looking at Grandma's pained face, I approached my dad. Dad, I can't understand why you blame your misfortunes on me. If you dislike me so much, why don't we just cut our ties? I pulled out a bank card from my pocket and handed it to him. Here's 600,000 yuan. The prize money I earned from being the top scorer in the college entrance exam. Let's call it a payment to end our father-daughter relationship. Dad took the card, his face dark with anger. I raised you. This is what I deserve. Don't think you can buy me off with this money. His gaze was filled with resentment, and he turned to Grandma. It's all because of you, you old bag. I said she was bad luck, but you insisted on keeping her. If she'd been fed to the dogs, none of this would have happened. The string in my heart snapped. Even though he too lived with the label of bad luck, why did he hate me so much? With anger, I confronted him. You were bad luck as a child, and Grandma never abandoned or fed you to the dogs. Why did Grandma remarry? Because you and Mom never sent her a dime. She was too old to work the land. How do you think an old woman survives? You say you raised me, but who dumped a 5-year-old me in the countryside because you wanted Grandpa's retirement money? Would you have welcomed me back if I hadn't gotten into a top high school? With a father like you, I feel nothing but shame. You call me a curse, yet you took those 600,000. Why not sever the ties? For once, even my dad couldn't find words amidst the judgmental stares. I turned to my grandparents, taking their hands, and looked at my dad. You never took care of Grandma, so don't worry about it now either. Do you think I don't know the reason you're being nice to Grandpa? You just found out about his neurology expert status. I advise you not to use Grandpa's name for anything. It'll come back to bite you. I was worried that my boldness might upset the admissions people, but surprisingly, they returned the next day, saying they would move us to the city center. They even found an affordable little 2-bedroom place by the school, so I could live with Grandpa and Grandma. Arriving at Harvard, everything settled into place. One day, as the 3 of us walked around the campus after dinner, seeing our shadows on the ground made me reflect on everything. In my past life, I feared not having my parents' love, so I always obeyed them, hiding behind Cindy. But in reality, only by being true to ourselves can we find the light. Max's extra story. I seriously don't get what's up with that campus belle Fanny. I've turned her down countless times, yet she still goes around claiming to be my girlfriend. Back in freshman year, I actually liked being her desk mate. Fanny had come from a town middle school, and it's crazy, but her scores were even better than mine. And hey, I had tutors for every subject to get those grades. But after school started, I noticed she couldn't even manage the usual homework from teachers. If it wasn't for her looking exactly like her photos, I'd have thought it was a different person. She's pretty, and most of the guys in class would happily let her copy their homework and back off during exams. But I have no clue what's up with Fanny's mind, thinking I'd like her too. She even claimed she was my girlfriend. That day I couldn't hold it in and called her out after school at the gate. Rather than taking it well, she pushed me into oncoming traffic. I got hit by a car, ended up on the pavement, and woke up blind. Honestly, though, I wasn't too bothered. The doc said the blindness is temporary, and I've been kind of enjoying the break. My parents really think I don't know. They've been divorced for ages. My mom's been a stay-at-home since forever, and didn't think about finding work post-divorce. Instead, she put all her energy into me, hoping I'd graduate and take over my dad's business. Meanwhile, my dad remarried and had another son, and mom's been worried I'll end up with nothing. So she's been pushing me hard. I didn't want to argue with her, and just played the role of a compliant puppet, thinking I'd be free once I went to college. Little did I know that Fanny's shove would grant me a bit of early freedom. When her parents knelt by my hospital bed, begging my mom not to sue Fanny, I nodded in agreement. But my mom insisted that Fanny take care of me. Isn't that just too much? When Fanny came, something felt off. This girl wasn't her. Fanny's parents must think I've gone blind and just grabbed any girl to fool me. Originally, I planned to let my mom vent her anger when Fanny showed up and then kick her out. But now, I had no intention of doing that. Why pity a girl who willingly suffers for money? I didn't expect her to be Fanny's sister. She told me she was the real Fanny. The girl attending the elite high school was Cindy, her twin sister. Whether it was Cindy or Fanny, I wasn't keen on calling them that. But she teased me, saying she wanted me to repay her with my whole life. Is this another girl who's into me because of my looks? I'll just call her Fanny to keep things simple and not risk getting involved. Her grades are so good, yet she's not favored at all at home. Without tutoring, I could also get into a top high school. Not to mention my mom who spoils me. Even my dad, who remarried and has a child later in life, would reward me with a house. Hearing about Fanny's family, I felt sorry for her. Caring for me, while the imposter Cindy, what's she up to? After taking off my phone watch, I asked Fanny to dial a classmate for me. Once connected, I asked him, did Fanny go to school today? On learning she didn't attend the elite school, and hearing her on the phone with another girl, I finally believed the girl in front of me was the real Fanny. At Fanny's insistence, I got a brain CT scan. Thankfully, I listened to her. The doctor said it was incredibly dangerous. Fanny's grandpa, who's a brain expert, personally came to the hospital to discuss my treatment. The hospital director privately told my mom that Fanny's grandpa is a renowned brain specialist, and it's hard to get his attention. My mom wanted to give him a thank you envelope, appreciating his help in treating me. Fanny's grandpa didn't take it. He only had one request. He hoped we could temporarily take Fanny in. This kid, Fanny, keeps her troubles to herself, afraid to worry her grandparents, never mentioning anything about her return. Her parents only favor the younger one, having ignored her for 10 years. If they take her back, what kind of life can they offer Fanny? My mom reached out to Frank, arranging everything before telling Fanny and hiring a tutor for us. Cindy wasn't at the elite high school, but I forgot she was still in the class group chat. Everyone congratulated her for ranking first, playfully saying Fanny was amazing, pretending to be a slacker all along. Seeing this, I knew she planned to stir up trouble. Sure enough, Cindy called, demanding Fanny return. Little did she know, we had already devised a plan to handle her. When Cindy came to our house, my mom treated her like the help, asking her to do chores. Not having done housework before, she was clueless. What started as my mom's attempt to vent by annoying Cindy became serious when Cindy broke a collection piece, making my mom so annoyed she had a headache. Cindy couldn't take it anymore, demanding Fanny swap back. I was surprised when Cindy, after just a few days, managed to bribe our housemaid for inside info. Fanny, under the alias Who Am I, became a popular streamer, initially wanting to keep her identity secret by wearing a mask during broadcasts. Cindy used this against her, staging appearances in camera view, capturing Fanny's pitiful look, and sending the video to my mom, claiming she was the real Fanny. My mom nearly laughed herself silly. Cindy's gotten used to bullying Fanny. Who would fall for such childish tricks? After Fanny left our house, I asked my mom why she let Fanny go, knowing it wasn't her fault. Didn't you notice how much she misses her grandparents? When Fanny presumed her grandpa wanted her to live with us, I had my doubts. She now has an excuse to move out. My mom called Fanny's grandpa to explain the truth. As she looked for a place near our school for Fanny, she found out Fanny had already arranged a suitable house for her grandparents. This kid is so capable. You gotta wonder if her parents are total idiots or what. Whether they are idiots, I don't know. but I was eager for my mom to settle things so I could return to school. Sitting in the classroom, I saw her transfer into our class, my seatmate of all things, and I was thrilled. Yet, I worried she'd misunderstand my mom and no longer consider me a friend. That entire lesson, I was a bundle of nerves, but too afraid to ask. After class, Fanny, as usual, asked, "Got anything you need help with?" I could tell from her eyes. She already knew everything. I smiled, glad to know our friendship never wavered. The end.